welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Welcome to Syosset Library's Turn the Page podcast. I'm Jessica, your host, and I am really excited to be here with the author of a book with a wonderful title that I took this book with me on vacation and I read it at Disney World, of all places. So this is also kind of about a vacation, but a completely different type of vacation than Disney, or the same, depending on how you look at it. Welcome, Rachel Moore. Let's talk about Safari Murder Party.
Hi, Jessica. Thanks so much for having me on today.
Thanks for joining us. So, yeah, this book is wild in more ways than one. In your own words, tell me what Safari Murder Party is about. People can imply it from the title, but but there's a lot going on in the actual book.
I do feel like the title does a lot of heavy lifting. Safari Murder Party is a campy, a high stakes sort of adventure thriller. It's set on a private island safari park during a corporate retreat, and everything kind of goes haywire when the CEO announces his retirement and then is promptly found dead. And in his last will and testament has uh, decided to bequeath the company, this multi-billion dollar publishing conglomerate, to whoever can survive on the island. It's so much fun. There's a workplace enemies to lovers romance. There are so many wild animals. I had a blast writing it, but I hope it is as zany and kind of outrageous as the title implies.
Yeah, no, it was. I mean, it was really a lot of fun, and you kind of run like a really good balance of the horrifying with the funny, which is super difficult to do. I got to a certain point in the book when things really got going, and I think I said, "Oh my God," like really like out loud in front of the people I was on vacation with, who were like, "What? What happened?" And I'm not going to say what that part was on the podcast because I want other people to experience it as well. But yeah, no, you did a really good job of like putting together office place politics and just different personalities that are in a multi-billion dollar company, and then setting them against this literal survival on safari situation. Where did the crazy idea for this come to you? And if you say the Jungle Cruise at Disney, I'm going to be like flabbergasted.
Okay, it wasn't Jungle Cruise. But the Jungle Cruise movie remains one of my favorite movies. This is
It
something that
was
I will.
so good.
It was
It
so
was
good.
so good. And I feel like it's overlooked, but it's definitely one of those those theme park ride movies that Disney has. Like some they can be so-so. But to me, it's like it's right up there with Jumanji. In like one of the, like one of the fun survival safari type stories. And it has a great cast, so I'm with you on
Yes.
that.
Yeah, it will come as no surprise that those are all my favorite movies. This kernel of this idea stemmed from both my dissatisfaction in the startup workplace. I didn't have the guts. The startup space is such a different beast than the corporate world. And I wasn't ready to tackle that. So I sort of pawned it off into this sort of corporate environment with Safari Murder Party. But I just think that there comes a time when you're like, wow, my heart rate is racing and all I've done is received a Slack message. Can we address this? And so that was a lot of it for me. And then I also just love it. It's in the book, like it's not a secret. I use an epigraph from Richard Connell's The Most Dangerous Game. And I read this short story in high school. It was one of those things where I felt like this was the most genius man I'd ever borne witness to reading this short story because I love a pun. I was like, oh my gosh, we're reading this and it's kind of ridiculous, but we're talking about it in class. And I feel like that imprinted on me. And when it went into the public domain, I thought, fantastic. All I want is to modernize this because, I mean, it remains that humans can be the worst. And I like the idea that when you're on a safari surrounded by all of these wild animals, in fact, one of the wildest animals is us.
Yeah, no, and I actually had a feeling that the most dangerous game had something to do with the book. Even before I read the quote. Just like reading the synopsis, I'm like, this has definitely got to have a like you know, um, a kernel of interest in it because it is a wild idea for the story. And it's a wild story in general. And I'm just kind of going over, in just a look over at like how that particular story has been adapted. And I have to say, like, my favorite was The Pest, which has John Leguizamo in it, and that is why I love it because John Leguizamo is awesome. But it's always fun because I feel like there's no possibility that you can do this story in a way, like there's so many ways you can go with it. And I felt like the corporate retreat was like the perfect way because everything is so bloodthirsty. And I loved your cast of characters. So the main character is Fletcher Spence, and she's like a sort of like a Midwest hometown girl, kind of like that's like, where she comes from, and she's decided she's going to make it in the corporate world. She's a assistant, an administrative assistant to the CEO, and she's like, and she has this history with his son, who is also on the island, by the way. And although he's not, he actually inherited the island itself. He's not really supposed to be in the running for the company, but everybody just kind of jumps on this idea, and it seems like it takes no longer than like 10 minutes for people just to decide how they're going to murder each other. And you were really creative with it. So like when it so you actually you started off also with a hierarchy, like a visual of the hierarchy of the company. Um, each of the characters, did they each have to fit a specific niche for you? You don't have to name names, but are they based on people or are they just kind of like archetypes?
I do think that they're more caricatures. Even in all of my work background, I've worked with some really wonderful people. I think I take much more of an issue with like the system than any one particular person, of course, but I do think that giving them these roles to sort of embody gave me an opportunity to play on that with how they might meet their demise. I have had several coffee chats with some of my other friends and my writing groups where I've shown up, I'm sitting there, I'm drinking my iced latte, and I'm in public. Like, what kind of horrible ways can we think of killing someone? Um, no spoilers, but there is a death. It comes after the midpoint, so it's later in the book. But there was one where we were like, um, are we even allowed to write that? So I don't know. I'm not the kind of person who I think thrives in a crisis. And it was really fun to be able to filter all of this insanity through the lens of somebody who would actually thrive in this particular crisis. So getting to watch Fletcher as kind of a almost like an amusement park attendee or someone at a zoo, but instead of the animals, she's watching the wilderness of her colleagues. That was really fun.
I will say like, and again, I don't want to give anything away, but I mean, I guess actually like there was one death that came early on that really shocked me. And I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. But I was like, oh, that's really messed up. But I mean, just in general, again, it's like this was really, I mean, a fun book about people being awful and also wild animals being wild animals. So Fletcher was, again, like she's very capable. She also thinks that this is madness. Waylon is interesting because he's very much like that fortunate son character, or so we think, and is also dropped into this madness itself. Did his character kind of take on different iterations? Was it always going to kind of be that enemies to lovers romance? Spoiler alert. I mean, I don't think that it's really that much of a spoiler. We kind of imply it. Yeah.
I absolutely adore Waylon. I think that it's so funny writing books because in real life, if somebody is mean to me, I'm like, wonderful, I will proceed to cry in a corner. Please don't ever look at me again. But in fiction, I'm like, they have to argue. Like, my preferred state of romance is we're going to bicker because I find it fun to write. So I knew from the jump that I wanted Wayland to be someone who challenged Fletcher because she is so sufficient. She is constantly trying to anticipate everybody else's needs. And I wanted her to have this counterbalance in Wayland, who was someone who, one, had never wanted for anything in all of his life. He's got access to anything he could ever dream of, but also who dares her to strive for more than what she currently has. And I think that that was really fun and really compelling to write. But I'll be honest, I started writing this book. Ooh, can I do quick math? I had the idea in 2020. It's crazy that was 6 years ago. And then I started drafting it in earnest in 2022. 2022. And I had literally opened up my Word document and I was writing about Waylon, and he's working as this bartender in a bar that he owns, just as kind of a middle finger to his father. And then I go to theaters and I watch the Uncharted movie, another incredible action adventure film. And he was a bartender. And I was like, oh man, well, I'm committed, so I'm not going to change it. But I couldn't believe it. So I just kept it. I was like, listen, we both have the same idea. Clearly, we're onto something here.
I also loved the animals. That was, I mean, there were definitely a lot of animals. But I did love them very much. Did you do a lot of research into the animals that you brought and like how they might or might not get violent? How big a spider can be. Did you do research into that? Because it's so funny to me because there is a big spider in the book, and I'm not going to say anything about it except for the fact that like I thought I'd gotten over my arachnophobia until I found out how big these things can actually grow in certain places of the world. Uh Again, not going to name any types of spiders. You gotta experience it. But yeah, like you you did good.
Thank you. I also would not fare well in front of a big spider. That is not something that I would perform well in that situation. But as far as the rest of the animals go, I sort of had this Spy Kids 2 approach. I wanted the island to feel very manufactured. It is obvious that these animals do not live in this environment naturally. It is purely the byproduct of this, I mean, truly just outrageous amount of accumulated wealth that the Cartwrights have. And I wanted to be able to use that to highlight, like, from the jump, this is not a real place. This place is a plaything. It is beyond the bounds of ordinary life. even before we get into the fact that they're going to all be asked to outlive each other in this environment. And so, as far as research on the animals go, there were a few things that I just like to acquire fun facts. Like, I knew that hippos are one of the deadliest animals. Obviously, I had to include a hippo. I mean,
So how did you find that out? Because I found, yeah.
I couldn't tell you. At some point in my life of the Steve Irwins in the world, I've just acquired this vague hippo knowledge.
I found out actually on this podcast when we interviewed the author Sarah Gailey, and they were the one to tell me because they are one of their books that they were known for best at the time. Now they've like done so many things, but it was like an alternate universe, which actually could have happened in alternate history where hippos were actually like introduced as into the ecosystem of North America for meat, which is like apparently there was only one vote in Congress that kept us from that. But the book that they had written went went with this idea that yeah, hippos, yeah, we all think they're really cute, but they're super, super deadly. And I had no idea. So when we got to that point, and again, like I don't want to tell anybody, but we kind of just we gave like a micro spoiler there. I was like, oh, this is not gonna go well.
I know it's controversial in the age of Mudang that we're going to talk, not in bad faith about hippos, but just about the reality of their existence.
Yeah, no, it's really wild, and it brings the Jungle Cruise ride to like a completely different level when you get to that point. And you're just like, yo, be happy that those are not that those are animatronic hippos because real hippos are, yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy and it was so funny. They won't ever like eat a person. Like they have no interest in eating you, which makes it all the much like all that much worse. But I did the one animal I had to research the most, and this was one of my favorite scenes in the book to write, was actually the bush baby because I was like, I just need a little critter.
I'd actually not known what a bush baby was, and I had to look it up while I was,
They're
yeah,
funky
while
little
I was
guys.
reading your
Yeah.
book. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, yeah, definitely. So are you working on anything at the moment?
I do have another zany, ridiculous, satirical thriller in the works with Berkeley. I'm really excited about it. That one's coming out in 2027. So I'm excited to see kind of what comes out of it. We're in those sort of early nebulous stages of writing the book, but I can tell you that we're going to take a closer look at love and what it means to acquire affection in this sort of social media ecosystem we live in.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
So again, this book was super fun. I just think that sometimes when everything seems crazy, sometimes something that's super outlandish is exactly what you need. And I think I think beyond that, it's probably, the business and the politics and the world of billionaires not genuinely caring about people as people. I think people are gonna relate to this or at least recognize some of those qualities in the characters of this book. Um, it was a good book. Thank you for writing it.
Oh, thank you for reading it. Oh my gosh. It's one of those things where I don't want people to relate to it. I would love nothing more if somebody picked up this book and said, I don't know any of these acronyms. I don't.
Right. Of course. Yeah. Yeah.
I'd be like, oh, more power to you.
Yeah.
But for those of us who have worked in those kinds of environments, I mean, I've talked, it's in my acknowledgments even that when I first had this idea, I really got to the point where I thought, wow, my job should not be killing me. And then I thought, but what if it was trying to do that?
Definitely check it out. Safari Murder Party, super, super fun. Thank you so much, Rachel, for coming on.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for having me.
And we are going to close this chapter of Turn the Page.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.